Hello, all you cosmic travelers and wanderers. This is Darlene Vandergrift and K. Melissa Waterman, inviting you to join us today in our episode of Expansion from Within, Exploring Multidimensionality.
Let me introduce you to my friend and dear colleague, Darlene Vandergrift. She is a lifetime experiencer, a medical intuitive, and a multidimensional mediator for over 35 years. She's also an author, an artist, a teacher, and a mentor for spiritually invested people.
And K. Melissa Waterman is my friend and colleague, and she's an intuitive mentor, a spiritual teacher. She also works with energy on many levels. In the past, Melissa has worked with Dr. Joe Dispenza on his research team.
Join us on our journey of meeting multidimensional beings, exploring what it means to be human, and expanding our spiritual evolution. Welcome, everybody. We're going to continue what we started last time, having Darlene check in and speak with one of the members of the council. This time we're going to speak with Espiritu.
That's it, Espiritu. We're both doing that one.
You know, it's a terrible thing when you don't know how to pronounce one of the multidimensionals' names, and I apologize in advance because this is an honored guest as far as I'm concerned. And this honored guest has asked to come on our second time of doing this directly because of me, to speak with me. And so yes. I want to get this being's name correct for sure. Espiritu.
That's, you have it. Espiritu, yes.
So welcome, Espiritu. I have in my notes that, Darlene, that you want me to talk a little bit about my history with dragons. Espiritu is a dragon. I will try to get a good picture to go up Espiritu for this week.
Yes.
Is that still good with you?
Yes.
So it's very interesting to me, my history with dragons, because if you asked me what my history with, say, fairies was, I could give you a long, and fairies are part of my history with dragons, but dragons have always been a little bit peripheral for me. I've come slowly into believing that the myths of our current culture are really actual beings that still exist and that did exist very actively on this planet. But it took me a while, right? Like, I have always had a dragon around. I've always had a statue of a dragon. Mm-hmm. I've always been very, interested in jewelry and looking at jewelry, and then thought, well, I don't have, why would I want that? Like, I don't have a thing for dragons, like my son had a thing for dragons and had every statue known to man of dragons and zoomed them around the house for a couple of years. But for me, it's been much more subtle until recently. And then I think probably, I want to say 5, 6, 7 years ago, somewhere in there, 2 friends of mine started talking about their connection, their daily connection with dragons. One very specifically had a lot of connection with dragons, the other on occasion. It got me going, like, wow, why do I have a connection with dragons? Like, let me check on this. And so that was the beginning of me actively going into the field and asking for guidance from dragons and finding good information. But I never felt like I've had a dragon, or if I do have a dragon, I don't know its name. I don't have direct communication with one dragon. I have a necklace on that has a little dragon on it. Mm-hmm. I have dragons around me. I have a couple of dragons next to me. Yeah. So I definitely have a connection, and I'm always looking for more information and wanting a little bit more. So I was very tickled to hear Espiritu wanting to speak with me about whatever information they may have. I would love to hear.
Okay. I'll just start with going after you. So I really haven't had any growing up or anything. It was never about dragons. There was no books about dragons that I was ever involved in. It wasn't until she came in, which was the last of the 28, when she showed up. And then I had my grandson that was born, and starting at age like 2 up till even now, there's been so much interest with dragons. He has all kinds of dragon books and everything, and he can tell you all things about every kind of dragon that there was. And we painted dragons, and he's quite an artist. And it really got me more involved in that, because when she showed up, it was okay. So she was the mediator between heaven and earth, because they no longer exist on the planet as we know them, at least not on the surface of the planet. There might be some ancestors that live underneath in the inner world, but most of them have vacated the planet because it got too crowded with humans and other beings in that period of time. And so their ability to function in the way that they wanted to, being in the outside world, not just in caves and whatever, became too detrimental to them. And so they really needed to, it's like they're back to the Federation again, because they were brought in from another planet because it was too small. So they were brought to Earth to propagate and to kind of settle in to the mechanism, the original form of what Earth was about before maybe even humans were here. And they stayed here for thousands, if not millions of years in their own evolution of that. But when things got too crowded here, they chose to leave. So they were relocated. There's a relocation program in the Federation that takes people or humans, because there's more humans on other planets as well. They take these beings that do not function in a way that is available for them or that they can thrive in. They will take them out and they will relocate them, because how many millions and billions and skillions of planets are there that can be inhabitable or made habitable. So that is a bit of her background, in that they are no longer existing here in the way that they have existed in the past, but she is familiar with you. There's several of them that are in her family, which I wasn't aware of. She's got 2 other, what we would consider brothers, or she's saying male siblings or offsprings that were born at the same time as she was. And that they went from what we would say is an egg birth to a live birth. That was part of their evolutionary process. So her 2 siblings and she are aware of you in another lifetime.
Wow.
Where, let me see if she'll give me that information. So you were still female. Well, they're saying they considered you an orphan. So they were not young dragons, but they considered you an orphan. They took you in whatever way that was, to bring you into their community, but it was only the 3 of them at the time. They didn't trust. It must have been early on in when humanity was they were trying to relate to humanity. So they didn't bring you into the fold or the clan of their dragons. They kind of kept you separate, almost like what we would keep a pet. So they kept you separate. They fed you, they cared for you, they helped you grow up. So there was something about, you never really got brought in, but you felt part of a family in that way. And then they set you free. So it feels like they brought you up to an age where you were sustainable, where you could take care of yourself. And then they moved you into more of your society. It feels like in that orphan place that you might have been, this feels like Nordic area, that you might have had. What would they have been called? Because they're saying men with horns.
Vikings
that moved into your community, and you escaped as a young girl. So they took you in that place. Like, you wandered for a long time. You were wounded, not physically, but you were thin, you were, emaciated. Like, they found you to take care of you, but then they pushed you back into society when you were old enough And they always just loved taking care of you. It gave them something in understanding the compassion for humanity. Like they took you on as a project.
Like the idea of being their pet puppy.
Pet puppy, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a fondness that they have for who you have been to them, and they believe who they've been to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's wonderful. That's lovely.
yeah.
How does it work? You know, that it was my past life, and is it Espiritu's life, or is it Espiritu's past life as well?
So timelines are interesting. So as she shows up, she's in that particular timeline that she knew you,
Mm-hmm.
because their lifespan is thousands of years. So that time period that was happening here on Earth, the time period that she was available as a younger dragon with you, it was all in her lifetime. Where she is right now, like that timeline still continues, right? Because it doesn't stop. I just get a snapshot of what it was like, but that continues. You continued in being more in your human culture in whatever way that was. They continued to grow and evolve in a way that was more benevolent. At least their clan was. At that age, she's not sure about other dragons, but there was a protective part of them with you because they didn't know if you would be hurt by other dragons or not, so they protected you. That timeline still continues with her, but she's saying she's not in that timeline. She's moved past that. That was a million years ago. But there's this part of her now that is wanting, and I think that seems like it's a natural progression of the council members, is that they want to aspire to the level of a light body. A lot of them are there, and I just get the information of who they are in a timeline that's important to us, that we would understand so that we can relate to them.
Is her clan or dragons related to dinosaurs?
She is giggling about that. So there's something about that was a precursor to dinosaurs, were like a precursor to see how those size beings functioned when there wasn't a whole lot of anything else on the planet in certain areas. So they are ancestral to her. Okay, this is interesting. So just like humanity had a jump, so did dinosaurs. She's not sure who created that jump, or if it was by choice, or if it happened because in her textbooks, there's something about the demise of the planet when everything was killed off because of what we consider as a meteor. That in their textbook, that was considered as an offense to the planet, in a way of an attack. So it's written up differently in what they understand. But many of the dinosaurs that were capable moved under. They moved into caves. They moved deep into caves. They moved someplace where they could thrive or live in that underworld without the effect of what happened on the surface. In that evolution, she believes that because that could have been millions and millions of years in that evolution to become more of what they would be able to fly more so than they could before, so that they could evolve into that place of managing, and something happened like this, they could get out of harm's way. They didn't have to walk out of harm's way. They could fly. And their intellect increased, their resilience increased, and their capabilities of interaction increased. So there's several ways that they could have jumped in their evolutionary process, but in the textbooks, she sees that as the most viable. in her belief system and her understanding.
Does she know where she originated from?
Before they were brought to Earth?
Yeah.
So she's saying apparently, so dinosaurs were here. She doesn't know if they existed somewhere else. So they were here, they functioned. It's part of that reptilian brain of seeing how that is a necessity.
Mhm.
So there was that piece of it. And then her clan, or those that she knew, were taken from another planet that were already, they were not dinosaurs when they were brought here. They were already evolved into various kinds of dragons. So they were brought in as the dinosaurs and the dragons here were evolving.
I see.
Okay, so they already pre-existed
Right.
somewhere. She was saying the closest that they had ever come to Earth, which they did not particularly thrive on, nor did they care to, was Mars. That there was something with the Mars atmosphere that was difficult for them. Mars did not look like what we assume or perceive today, that it was more of it had more water on it. It had more capability of life, sustaining life. And so that they were placed there. When we take somebody and we put them in she's saying like foster care. When we put somebody in foster care, we put them in a holding space. We do something in their transferring them to someplace else. That Mars was considered part of that.
Mhm.
For some beings, of dragons included.
What does she want us to know about dragons in general? For our well-being, or anything that she wants us to know, really.
So they are very connected to the heart space, more so than how they're depicted in our languaging and our media. And she's saying that there's more coming out now. That's why children are being more drawn in, that because of their size and because of what they have been taught to be in the past as malicious or rageful, the fire-eating dragons, those that it's starting to become more benevolent. So it's moving in a direction that feels very inclusive, inviting them back.
Mhm.
And them coming into our consciousness in some way helps us to, by bringing them in, we have a different access to the field. So that field of consciousness that's around us, they exist in that area in more of it's like a template, or if you want to connect with them, it's moving into that consciousness of the benevolence of who they are, at least in some of them, right? And so you move that consciousness and that intention in to connect with them in the field, that they are more than willing to do that. They are not ones to show up like some grays will show up, some other beings will show up in a physical form, even if it's for a few seconds. They are not one to do that.
Right.
That they can be shapeshifters, some of them. So they are curious and working more with humans, but they are especially content with working with children, because there is more open-heartedness. If children can become more used to accommodating with dragons in their younger years, the scary things of life may not be so scary at some point, because they can access them at a level that doesn't have to be fearful. So it gives them like the dragon heart. It gives them that courage. It's not just the lions that we are familiar with that lion heart. It's the dragon heart that gives them a form of courage, a form of bigness, a form of identity.
I like that for anyone who wants to connect with dragon energy. Then I hear that it's more available from children that they're very interested in connecting because children's hearts are already a little more open.
Mhm.
But if a person has a propensity, then it sounds like they can go into the field and just request connection, and with their open heart, they'll receive it.
Yeah, and she's saying there's plenty to go around. It's really about training the human.
That's right.
So she's saying that connection, because there's plenty of them to go around, that it can, a one-to-one is more like you got 3 of them, but a one-to-one is more of a companionship that gets developed. They tune into innate wisdom within humans, so they read them really well,
Nice.
and they can be a good guidance system.
That's lovely. I think that's probably about as good as it gets, isn't it? To have a guidance system that we can go in the field and access guidance.
She is mentioning, this was coming up a couple minutes ago, but now I see why she's bringing them up. The only dragons that still exist here are water dragons. They have still the capability of the depth where we haven't gone yet,
Mhm.
and the caves that exist under that, and their ability to function with gills and everything. They don't need to come up to the surface.
Right.
And so she knows of a clan that is still in power, whatever that means to them, that are in the oceans and the deep lakes,
Like Scotland.
like Scotland. Yeah.
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 It's heartening to know that the Loch Ness may be happy, content being under the water.
Doesn't have wings, she says, but yes, he's Nessie, isn't that what they call him? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like the grandfather of the tribe that lives. Well, they don't just live there, they travel there. Yeah.
It's
See,
lovely.
there's caves all underneath every place, and there's tunnels underneath every place. So it's an interconnecting web that we have no idea about.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Let them be free without our,
Yeah.
you know,
Interference.
until our hearts soften a bit more, and I think that's probably best.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything else that we can learn from Espiritu?
Saying something about counting the days. They are counting the days of reconnection. But I don't think she's talking about the reconnection of dragons to humans. I think she's talking about humans to humans.
Yeah.
So they are counting the days of that, because when that happens on a more regular basis, when that happens because of the challenges that we are being given right now to hopefully open ourselves up to having new ideas about how to handle this planet, because we were the original caretakers that we, in her world, have miserably failed at. But when humans become more human, and when they have more interaction with each other, that is in a understanding, benevolent, kinder way, that's the days that they're counting, because that will open up for other beings that have existed here prior to us taking over. They will have more willingness to be available to us for our technology, for our next advancement, our next evolutionary jump that will not be done by the Federation. It'll be done by our choice. To say, okay, this is what we want, this is what we need, but it's going to come from the outside. Our technology already is coming in some way from the outside, because those that are bringing it in are connected to the field.
Right.
And so they're bringing in that information, sometimes simultaneously, but they're bringing that in. But the real power of what humanity can do for themselves will come from interdimensional places. It'll come from the multidimensional places, but we have to be willing to accept them and not try to kill them off or contain them to keep our own belief about our history intact. So they're counting the days, waiting for the possibility for that to advance and open. And they said, we got plenty of time. They do.
That's great. I'm
Yeah.
glad that they're patient and content and knowing that it will come. That's very heartening. Well, I have no more questions today.
Great. She was very, she's handing you, and I don't know if you have one of these. She's handing you, did you ever get the egg that was given out in Sage a long time ago?
I didn't keep one, but I remember you bringing
Oh, then
it.
I'm supposed to give you one.
Oh.
It's a representation of who they are not now, but it is a connection for you with them.
Awesome. Great. I look
So
forward.
just remind me, I'll bring one.
I will try to remind you. Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
And if you have any questions about Espiritu, about their timeline or what we've discussed today, please go to soulunion.com and write us an email, and we will love to hear from you.
We will continue with whoever shows up next.
That's right. Next time, someone new. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a good whatever, guys.